What is up, everyone, and welcome to today's video. I'm going through a tier list of Final Fantasy games. There will be a few spoiler stories here, so if you haven't played through a certain game and I'm about to go talk to it, or I'm about to talk about it, please mute the stream until I'm starting to do with the whole the next game. But first of all, we're just going to go dive right into it. And again, this is my own personal opinion. This is my own personal tier list. So please be aware that not everything you will agree with. But again, it's just how I feel. So Final Fantasy 1. A tier for me. It's the original Final Fantasy. It saved Square Enix a lot of money, I think. Well, it's a game that made Squaresoft, in my opinion. I think the franchise itself wouldn't have been a thing without this. Sakaguchi released this game to be his last ever video game, or intended to be his last ever video game. If I do believe that was, I do remember that being the case. But again, it was so popular. It was so popular, he released, like, again, it's hard to explain it, but you if you know Final Fantasy as much as I do, or love Final Fantasy as much as I do, Final Fantasy 1 is just there. And again, there might be one or two games omitted from this list, but I will make an honorable mentions for them. So Final Fantasy 2 next. I haven't played it in a long time, so I cannot remember the story much. I remember there being a rebellion type story against the Empire. You've got the Emperor. You've got the ship called the Dreadnought, which I think you'll blow up. You have characters as Firion, Maria, Gus, and Leon. And yeah, you have some other interesting story elements with Joseph, a character that you meet, and he is referenced in another Final Fantasy later on, but I'll get to that. But yeah, I can't remember much of the story for Final Fantasy 2. I will try and get through them. We try to play a variety of Final Fantasy games throughout the month of February, and this will occur every year. So if you haven't subscribe to my YouTube channel or haven't followed my Twitch and you love Final Fantasy, please come on over. I welcome anyone over, as long as you're not a massive a-hole. So yeah, Final Fantasy 2, in my opinion, C. Final Fantasy 3, I played it last year, and I played the Pixel remaster anyway, and I remember a bit of the story. I remember the crystals. I remember stuff about the World of Darkness. I remember the Cloud of Darkness. Xande. I remember some of the fights. I remember the Eternal Wind. One of the best open world soundtracks there is. And I'm talking about nearly all the games. I think it's close to beating out Over the Hills from Final Fantasy 9 for me. But again, Final Fantasy 3, especially the Pixel remastered, fantastic. Give them a shot. Give that game a chance. It was the first one that introduced the job system, and as you know, multiple other Final Fantasies down the line leaned more into the job system. So yeah, I think that deserves to be in B. So Final Fantasy 4, I believe, is B as well. Again, it's a fantastic game. Maybe it doesn't do the job system as Final Fantasy 3 did. I don't know what made them go into that. But yeah, I think Final Fantasy 4 is definitely B tier. The story is fantastic about a knight having these questions about what he's he's questioning himself about these duties that his king, the king of Baron, is giving to him to go take the crystals. And yeah, you also got a love story between Cecil and Rosa, but it's not just them, it's a love triangle, it's a love rivalry because Kain loves Rosa. And we have many other aspects. We got Rydia the summoner, we have Edge the ninja, we have a spoony bard, if you know what I mean. But yeah, this game definitely in B tier. It's been a while since I played it, and maybe again my opinion on this would probably be either higher or lower, depending on what I do about it. And major spoiler as well. Golbez, one of the, I wouldn't even say it is the main villain in this. I mean, yeah, he's a villain for a good portion of this game, but he's not the villain. You actually see him fight with Fusoya at the end of the game. And yeah, I think Final Fantasy IV is just one of the greatest. Is a good story, especially how you travel to the moon. And we've seen another game which I'll talk about during this video. But yeah, like I said, Golbez, especially being Cecil's brother, absolutely fantastic twist. But anyway, next, Final Fantasy V. I think this is a highly underrated game, and yeah, I'm gonna go into depth of Final Fantasy V. So again, Final Fantasy V brings back the old classic job system that Final Fantasy III had, along with 4 or 5 unique different characters, and I will go into these with detail because I've been playing Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster over at twitch.tv/Rumney90. I might as well get the plug-in. And yeah, Final Fantasy V, fantastic game. Definitely underrated. You have a whole cast of characters like Helena, Kryl, Faris, Bart, Galuf. And you even get some side characters that you start to enjoy talking to. This is the first game that I think introduces Gilgamesh, who is a phenomenal, fun little character. But yeah, the job system comes back. You have to protect the 4 crystals, but unfortunately they break, and again, massive spoiler for this game. The evil warlock Exdeath reappears. He leaves your home planet, or what we assume is Bart's home planet, to go fight Exdeath in, again, spoiler, Galuf's actual world, because we know that Galuf, who came through from a meteorite, came from another world. But it's not just that, but we meet a whole other sort of bunch of characters. We meet Zezat, we meet Kelga, who were both members of the Warriors of Dawn, Galuf's former comrades, and we even learn that Bart's father, Dogan, came from this world and was also a Warrior of Dawn. And as the game goes by, and I mean, even from the beginning, once you reach, I think it's Karnak or Waltz, I think it's Karnak, that you see side characters die, but you get, you kind of feel for them scenes. And then again, a major spoiler for this game is Galuf's death is so hard hitting. It does something that I can't remember if there's any main character deaths in Final Fantasy IV or side characters, but for hours you play with, you get this repertoire between Galuf and the rest of the party, and then all of a sudden he dies. And it's super heartbreaking as well, because the cast Bart, Kryl, Lena, Faris try and use everything. Phoenix Downs, elixirs. And this is not in a battle system either. They shout this out. But unfortunately, he just dies because he gave all his strength to repel Exdeath. And I think that's amazing. And then later on, you get the two worlds merging. And yeah, you have to find the 12 exotic weapons. I think this is also the first game that introduced Omega Weapon along with Gilgamesh. And even Shinryu. If you know Shinryu, he's one of the major dragons of Final Fantasy. He's pretty much one of the gods of the dragons. I can't remember if that's the case, but yeah. Fantastic game. Again, I cannot go into detail on how much I love Final Fantasy V. Now, Final Fantasy VI. I think it's God tier. I've only played it through it once and completed it once. But the whole story of the Magitech War, or the Magi War, you have a whole variety of characters. Not only do you have Terra, but you have Loki, you have Sabin, Edgar. Also, can we just talk about suplexing a train? That is one of the biggest memes of Final Fantasy, and you just gotta love it. I think you just gotta love it. You have a character, a main villain in Kefka, who's so insane that, in my opinion, if they released a voice remake, I would either have the voice actor who voiced Kefka in the Dissidia games, or my own personal favorite, but I don't think it will happen, is Mark Hamill. And again, unfortunately for this scenario, I think Mark Hamill would think it's like playing like the Joker. And unfortunately, with the unfortunate passing of Kevin Conroy just at the end of last year, unfortunately, I don't think we'd ever get that chance. But again, Kefka is one of the characters that main villains that actually succeeded in doing what he said he was going to do. But yeah, he wins in the end. Well, not him. Our main cast wins at the end. Shadow. We meet loads and loads of characters. But yeah. Again, Final Fantasy VI, God tier game. Final Fantasy VII. This is the first ever Final Fantasy game that I ever released. That I ever played. And I played this around about 7 years old. 8. Somewhere around about there. And my brother's friend brought this over. So I got a chance to play it. And the first thing I thought was, who's this guy with this massive sword? Why has this guy got a gun arm? Who are these characters? And here's the thing. I know a lot of people got into Final Fantasy thanks to Final Fantasy VII. And I've got to think that people would place Final Fantasy VII in this area, in God tier. S tier, whatever you want to call it. And you've got characters like Sephiroth, a main villain, who's so amazing. But you've also got lovable characters like Tifa, Aerith, Barret, Red 13, or Nanaki, as people would like to call him. You've got Yuffie, Vincent, Sid Caitsith. It's such an amazing game, and it's pretty much a story about that went from eco-terrorism to somebody who is actually trying to become a god. Or just a higher power. And Final Fantasy VII had one of the biggest moments in video game history. And if you haven't played this, I would mute this now because this is a massive spoiler. And we'll probably talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. So I would definitely mute this video. But yeah, I would say Aerith's death in this game. Oh boy, the second Sephiroth kills Aerith, you not only do you lose a main party character who seemed to be the only person able to stop Sephiroth, but you also get an emotional fight with Jenova Life. And yeah, it's you hear Aerith's tune play in the background, and it brings a lot of people to tears just by playing that scene. And then not only that, but we have a lot more scenes down the line in the game where we learn more about Cloud's past. We learn that he had the memories of Nibelheim, but he placed himself in the footsteps of another, in the shoes of another, which again introduced a fan favorite of the franchise, Zack, to the game. We didn't get to know much about Zack in this game. All we know is that him and Cloud got out of Nibelheim together and were two main figures. But again, we'll go into that down the line. So, and again, Final Fantasy VII is widely known as probably the most popular of the Final Fantasy series. So we'll go into more detail. Final Fantasy VIII, I'm kind of torn. Again, you've got a cool character like Squall, you've got a whole array of characters, you've got Zell, you've got Rinoa, you have Quistis, Irvine, Selphie, I think I mentioned Selphie, I think we got Headmaster Sid, we have a whole bunch, but I think I'm going to put it in B because the whole story kind of gets convoluted to at a certain point, and this is at the end of disc 2. If you know, you know. But it starts to try to do time travel shenanigans, and a lot of us kind of love going into the time travel shenanigans. Sometimes it's fun, but it's just a whole cluster mess of like trying to fit the pieces one to one by one, should I say. But yeah, again, it's B. I still enjoy it. It's close to being A. And again, I think a lot of people got put off by the junction system. But I think the second you learn about the junction system just by doing, and you get that right build, you pretty much can just destroy a good portion of the game just by going through with the junction system all set to certain characters. Now, next is my personal favorite of the Final Fantasy franchise. I gotta put it in front of 6. In fact, I'll do this just to make things much easier. Final Fantasy 9. It's my favorite game of all time. Not only do we get an amazing story between... we have a lot of stories to go through. We have a character that's trying to figure out what his life means in the form of Vivi, who's just a sweet, innocent character who's trying to go through the life, trying to find answers of who he is. And then when you figure out what he is, why was he made? Why was he born? We have also characters like Zidane, who is my favorite character of the franchise, who, as much as a, how can I put it, womanizer? He's still kind-hearted. He tries his best to do right by everyone. I mean, yeah, some people might be a bit hard on him or try and act more holier than thou. I mean, look at Steiner. All he does is try to take the princess back home to Alexandria, but later on down the line, Steiner comes to the realization, yeah, the queen lied to him. Sedan did what he had to because he was under the instructions of the Lindblum's leader, Sid, along with Sedan's friends from Tantalus. You get characters like Freya. We learn about her backstory of Burmecia, or Burmecia, it depends on what you call it. You get characters like Aiko. I think I pronounced Aiko's name right. It never really shows. We believe she's the last of the Summoner tribe, but we find out that Garnet is as well. And by the way, Garnet is such a, in my opinion, one of my favorite Final Fantasy girls, if not my favorite. And we get a weird character in the form of Quana, however you pronounce that name as well, who just loves to eat, just absolutely devours anything in his path. We get emotional storylines with Mog. We also have moments of like amazing music as well. For example, Sudan's moment in Pandemonium. If you know that moment, that is my favorite moment of the Final Fantasy franchise. It's Sudan walking through the halls of Pandemonium whilst also listening to Not Alone and telling his friends, or trying to shun his friends away. After, throughout the entire game, he's there to help them. They come to his rescue, and for a little while he shoves them away until Sudan's fight with the big turtle thing. And then you see Garnet break him out of his depression trance. And she starts... We already know she started developing feelings for Sudan. Like, he already had feelings since, I think it was around about the Lindblum, when you first get to Lindblum. But yeah, the music's fantastic. Festival of the Hunt, Roses of Mir, the battle themes, again, Not Alone, Eternal Darkness, and again, all this is just, again, I could go on and on about Final Fantasy IX, but I'm not going to. The ending, the final boss, I think we all know that it's a what moment, if you know about Necron. But again, my favorite Final Fantasy, obviously being number 9. Yeah, let's just leave it at that. Number 10. I think it's A tier. You got Blitzball, you got unique characters. First Final Fantasy that was voiced. Yeah, you may have the whole laughing scene, but again, you've got to realize this was a moment where two characters, one who didn't tell the other, or which I'm going to say, Yuna has not told Tidus yet, or any of the cast, that being a summoner means sacrificing themselves just for a temporary state of peace called the calm. And Tidus, or Tidus, depending on... that's a whole topic in itself. He is and finds out that his father, Jecht, is Sin, the massive whale-like creature going all over Spira, destroying stuff. But again, I could go through this game. Again, I don't want to make the video too long, but again, I think Final Fantasy X up there in terms of some of the best games of Final Fantasy. We'll just leave it for now. Final Fantasy X-2. I think, I don't think it's absolutely horrible. The reason being I say this is because the job system, the battle system is phenomenal. The story, though, and everything else could have been so much better. It's hard to go into it. I mean, I think making the main cast as girls was a fantastic idea. It hasn't been done before, in my opinion. Well, not in the Final Fantasy franchise. I think having two recurring parts of the main cast from the last game return, especially Yuna, was a fantastic idea. Pain, I think she was a great addition to the cast. But again, the story, even some of the mini games could have been done better. But yeah. Again, I don't want to go into much of 10-2. But I do believe it is an amazing experience. It's a decent experience. Not an amazing one, but Final Fantasy 11. So by the time of this recording, I have not finished Final Fantasy 11. I don't know if there's an ending. I have just started playing it at the beginning of this year. But yeah, it's pretty much just like a Final Fantasy online game. It seems to have been at the beginning, a Final Fantasy game. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have the massive player base, in my opinion, as 14, but again, it plays out just like a Final Fantasy game, and it's got a whole MMO aspect behind it, so it's definitely there. I just haven't you know what I mean. Final Fantasy 12, I think, is B tier. I haven't fully finished it, but I have gotten to near the end of it. I need to go through the game again. And I'm going to count Zodiac Age in this, by the way. So, Final Fantasy 12, the battle system is fun. The Gambit system, I have a bit of a... I'm neutral on it. I don't love it, I don't hate it. I think the characters are fun. I think it's pretty much, and I do believe I've heard this quote before, it's a Final Fantasy with a Star Wars or story-like element. Obviously, what I mean by that is like A New Hope to the Return of the Jedi. So it's pretty much like that from what I remember hearing and what I played of it. And it does feel like that. But again, with the Zodiac Age, it improves so much of what I used to play on the PS2 version. And yeah, I think I'll just leave it for that for now. But again, we'll go on to the next game. Revenant Wings. Again, haven't played it, so I don't have any opinion on that. I don't know if it's good or if it's bad. So again, Final Fantasy 13. This is a tough one. I love the characters, albeit Hope being at the start or for most of the game, I'm not a big fan. The combat system isn't the greatest, in my opinion. I am going to go through this game and the rest of the 13 trilogy again, but again, Final Fantasy 13 could have been so much more. It could have been better. It could have been worse. I could have put it in D tier. Again, the story going against Fate and such like that, it's a classic trope. It's a classic trope of going against Fate. But I don't mind those stories. I enjoyed the story for what it was. I enjoyed the character. I definitely think Lightning is one of my favorite main characters, especially female lead characters. And you've got characters like Zaz, Vanille, Fang, Snow, again, Hope, I suppose. But yeah. Going on to 13 too. I think it's the same tier. Oh, by the way, 13. Great ending, by the way. Especially Leona Lewis's My Hands. I don't know if it's a different song at the end for any of the version. But Leona Lewis's My Hands song, chef's kiss. I think that was a beautiful ending. And an ending that should have just stayed where it was. And that's why we're going to go into 13.2, which is, if they ended 13 with the cliffhanger of obviously Lightning being torn into Etro's gate, then fine. I would have went, ooh, there's a sequel coming. But they just announced 13.2, and again, great trailers, by the way, with Charisse New World, and we play as Lightning's sister this time, and we meet another character in the form of Null. But not only that, we have, okay, I might give it a little bit more credit in this. You know what? I'm gonna bump it up a little bit. I enjoyed it more than 10.2 in some regard, but also on the same. But you also capture monsters that fight by your side. Again, the Crystarium's not everyone's favorite leveling up system. You have the arena. You have a few alternate costumes, but not that many. Yeah, I can't remember. Again, we'll be playing through this over at my Twitch channel at some point. But yeah, again, I can't really say much about 13.2. Lightning Returns. Apart from the Majora's Mask scenario with the time limit, I think it was a highly improved game on 13 and 13.2. Lightning returns as the savior of humanity, working for the god Bernavelza, who in 13 was only named the Maker. And what I love about 13 Lightning Returns is not only the whole variety of costumes you have with Lightning and the weapons, but the whole battle system is turned on its head. You can change your job class in the middle of battle, just like 10.2. And I think Lightning Returns does great on this. Again, Majora's Mask mechanic, and some of the fights get a little bit tricky, but again, I enjoy Lightning Returns more than 13 and 13.2. It's not that I dislike these games, it's just they could have been better. Again, that's why I'm going to lean on it. They could have been better. They weren't better. But again, I still enjoyed them. Especially Lightning Returns. Especially the ending. Now, Final Fantasy XIV. And by the time there was recording, the new update for Final Fantasy XIV just released not long ago. It's close to being my second favorite Final Fantasy. I started playing Final Fantasy XIV 10 years ago when A Realm Reborn came out. And I did take a bit of a a few years break away from it after the launch of Heavensward. And I never got to finish Heavensward until 2020, I do believe. But again, Final Fantasy XIV, in terms of the battle system, but for this, it's mostly all about the stories and the abilities of each job. Again, I'm not an MMO player, like a hardcore MMO player, but Final Fantasy XIV scratches every itch I have. And again, the stories of the cinematics for the expansions. A Realm Reborn, fantastic. Bahamut just destroying the rest of Eorzea and stuff like that. You have Heavensward opening, fantastic music. You see the ending of the post-quest line of A Realm Reborn and much more. And then we lead into Stormblood. Again, not my favorite expansion, but it was great. I'm not going to say it was the worst, but it wasn't the best either. And then you lead into Shadowbringers. and I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, but a lot of people have found their new favorite antagonist or character of Final Fantasy from 14, Shadowbringer, Emmett Selk. A fantastic character with a lot of sass and charm, and you really, when you realize what he's trying to do, especially his story, his background about the Ascians or the Ancients, or we call it, you can't blame him. You really can't blame him. I mean, yes, he's tried to, him and his brethren tried to reduce the world's ashes, but I think with Emmett Selk, you feel more sympathetic. Because at the end, you see a whole image of Amarant. You enter the city of Amarant by his creation of his memories. And he remembers or tries to keep a hold of the ones and places that he loved. But unfortunately, we had to make our stand to protect the people of our world, the source. And again, Endwalker leads more into the whole, like, Unsundered of the worlds. We meet Emmett Selk again being fantastic as usual. Hythlodaeus, who we did meet a brief moment in the end of Shadowbringer. And then I've got to talk about the walk. The walk in Final Fantasy Endwalker is one of my favorite moments of the entire series, if not the second best, because not only is it reminiscent of Sedan's walk in Final Fantasy IX and Pandemonium, the questline is called Not Alone, and when I noticed that, I was like, the music as well, with Close in the Distance, or Close in the Distance, with the voices of those that we've met, Ardbert, Papalymo, Minfilia, everyone. Fantastic. Just an absolutely fantastic game. And then the final trial end singer, the music that hits after the second phase begins, and you hear the Scions speaking and praying. Final Fantasy XIV is probably it's the closest it's ever been for me for Final Fantasy 9. And if you haven't played it, just play it for the story. Don't play it for the combat system. But again, we're going to go into the next one. Final Fantasy 15. I think it gets a lot of flack. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great when it released. Obviously, by the end of the game, you kind of get these moments of, you know, that they cut stuff out, or the ending part in the Imperial City drags on a bit with the Death Ring. But again, the combat system was decent. It's pretty much a prologue of what Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat system kind of improved upon and such. But again, I wish I could go on all day, but unfortunately there's just a few things I cannot do and sit here all day. Crystal Bearers, never played it, so I can't say. Brave Exvius, I don't play that much. I don't play it as much as I want to. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's a gacha game, obviously. I mean, it's fun. It's fun. I do log into it a few times, but it, again, with it being a mobile game, I just can't really say much. Dissidia NT, I gotta put it in D. I think it's fine. It's fine as a game. But the problem is, when you have the original Dissidias that were on the PSP, you can't really do much better than them. Especially Duodecim. Crystal Chronicles released on the PS4 and Switch and Xbox, I think. Again, I honestly didn't think much of it. I enjoyed it. Again, it's Final Fantasy. I'll play it. But yeah, I may need to play it again. But again, my thoughts on that are kind of all over the place. That Final Fantasy, I've got it. I just haven't finished it. I barely started it. So I have a little reasoning to say about it. Monsters of the Deep is the VR fishing game of Final Fantasy 15. I think this is fun. But unfortunately, I've not got much time to play it because I need to set up my VR. I need to set up my PS4. I mean, I could play it on my PS5. But again, it's not too bad. If you've got a VR, I'd definitely give this a try. I mean, hell, even if you just stand up close to a chocobo, that's really fun. But yeah, again, Dissidia, I'm gonna put the original in B, only because Duodecim is in that list, as you can tell. And yeah, before this game came out, I wanted a fighting game based on Final Fantasy characters. You know how you got like Street Fighters or Mortal Kombat. What we got was much bigger than what I thought. The only problem I have with it is that they never released it on the more popular consoles like the Xbox 360, PS3. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's fantastic. PSP just, although saying that on the PSP, you could take it around with you, so that's a plus. And again, the reason why I put this so up here instead of Dissidia NT, NT may look great, but I think everything else, it could have been better. Again, it could have been better. It could have been just like Duodecim and Dissidia. That just could have been the same gameplay, just with better graphics on the modern day consoles, and it would have been much, much better. But they decided to go with the 3v3, and I do not know how I feel. Now, here's my thoughts with Final Barline. I'll put Theorhythm here. But, no, this is Curtain Call. Curtain Call is fantastic. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a fantastic game. But with Final Barline releasing in 6 years' time, I played the demo. I'm going to enjoy Final Barline much more than these, because Final Barline is on the main. It's on a PS4 and Nintendo Switch. If they released it on the Xbox as well, that would have been great. But again, these games are such amazing fun. And for those who played it, you really know what these games are like. I'm going to put these in here. Never seen or played Before Crisis. I think Before Crisis is a game. I do not know. The After Years, I need to play it. I really do need to play it. King's Tale, it's free. It's a pixelated game. Doesn't offer much in terms of the combat. So I can't really say much about it. Again, I'll just place it there. Crisis Core. I think this is a phenomenal game. Especially if you played Reunion and... Reunion. And Reunion is on my YouTube channel, by the way, the entire playthrough, so you should be able to see that. It did... If I'm talking about Crisis Core Reunion, so much better than the original PSP version. The graphics look amazing. I had so much time with it. I only need to beat the Super Boss Minerva, but I think this game's great. It touches upon the original story of the Buster Sword, of Zack there, and we learn more about him. We learn how him and Aerith meet, pretty much the same as Cloud met Aerith. You kind of don't hate Sephiroth in this game. You kind of go, is Sephiroth turning into a bad guy? Shame. Because you kind of want to like him, because, yeah, there are times where he's emotionless, but he goes, we're going to find Angeal and Genesis, and we're going to fail to eliminate them because they're my friends. He doesn't say that out loud, the my friends bit, but you kind of get the gist. But again, Crisis Core, fantastic, especially the end scene. If you know the story of Zack Fair, you know his fate. Again, Dirge of Cerberus, I tried to play this I think I tried to play this last year. I just couldn't. My phone's going off quite a bit. Yeah, it's a sequel to the Advent Children movie. But yeah, I tried to play it again. I just couldn't get through it. I may try it again at some point. I may try and go through it all over again. But yeah. Final Fantasy Type 0. I'm going to put it in C tier. It wasn't that bad. I thought it was fun having 12 different characters to choose from with their own little unique style to play as. Again, I can't really say much about it. But again, it was good. It was good. And especially in the sea Crystal Novellis, or whatever you call it. Tactics, I haven't fully played through or finished, but I know it's a popular game. I want to go through it at some point. Hopefully they'll remaster it, just like they did with current tactical games. Dimensions, never played. Explorers, I have it. Honestly, nothing much to shout about. I do think I enjoyed it just a little bit more than King's Tale. I definitely played it more than a King's Tale. It was just pretty much your Final Fantasy Monster Hunter game. But again, nothing I can say on it. You get a lot of costumes from previous Final Fantasies for your character. Dimensions 2, not really much to touch on. Record Keeper, again, being a mobile game and recently shut down for good. When it first launched, I thought it was fantastic. But then the years went and they added a lot more mechanics, a lot more gachas or drops every week. And then it kind of just died last year. It went on for a long time though. Not much can be said for gachas to last that long. But again, it shut down. Unfortunately, could have been better, could have been worse. Justice Monster, I really do not have much remembrance playing this game. I remember playing it. I was not impressed. Duodecim, yeah. I say yeah because it did what Dissidia did, but Duodecim leveled, like, amped it up. Not only did the add more characters, but they had, well, that's, I can't remember much of what Dissidia added. They overhauled the whole interface with your character's HP and added characters like Yuna, Lightning, Laguna, some of the other popular characters from Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy series. And then you had the God in Fire soundtrack, and one of the toughest fights in that game is against Feral Chaos, who you can unlock as a character. Because I cheesed the hell out of that fight. But again, I love Duodecim. I wish NT was just Duodecim, but on obviously with it being on modern day console. Mobius Final Fantasy, I didn't really touch that much, and I think some people did enjoy it. I'm not too certain. Well, the Final Fantasy, I've not completed, but I definitely enjoyed it a tad. I haven't finished it. I will get through it. But for now, I think I'll put it in between 13 and Crystal Chronicles. So, again, a few games omitted from this list. I would say Final Fantasy VII Remake goes into B or A, just because I know a lot of people don't like the whole added segments. I think the added segments are fine, a little bit of backstory. I think it being a sequel to Final Fantasy VII instead of a one-to-one remake helps me decide that it's more of an A game. And I'm looking forward to see what they do with Rebirth. I have theories of what's going to happen. And we see hidden cutscene, like we have a cutscene at the end with Zack, which I was surprised about when I seen it. And yeah, I think the last thing I can say is Strangers of Paradise is your Neo-esque game that was made by Team Ninja. I liked it. The only problem is Strangers of Paradise came out around about near the same time as Elden Ring last year. Elden Ring was just my game of the year last year. It's hard to say. Like, I can't really touch more on that, but again, Elden Ring destroyed Strangers of Paradise for me. Again, Strangers of Paradise, really fun. Tried to incorporate a lot of fan favorite or Easter egg stuff in that game, so I can't really blame it. And then final bar line this next 7 days. That's going to be fun. I'm going to play it off stream on Thursday. And I think Final Fantasy 16 releases this year. I'm looking forward to it. I think a lot of massive YouTubers are. Unalesca and so many other Final Fantasy fans are looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. And yeah, that is going to be it for that tier list. Everyone, thank you all for stopping by. Again, I know there's not a lot of games on, like, there's probably games on this list that I can't remember, so I do apologize for that. But yeah, thank you for sticking around. If you enjoyed what you've seen, please hit that subscribe button and follow button on Twitch. Subscribe button on YouTube's free, and the follow button on Twitch is free, so you're doing me favors, and you get notified when I go live, so you can watch me and interact with me, because I want to interact with friendly folk. And yeah, thank you all for stopping by again, for making this list. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you didn't, that's fine. My content's not going to be for everyone. But again, thank you all so very much for stopping by, and I shall see you all next time.